Hello, my name is Honey Badger Actual. Today we're going to talk about scouting, light interdictors, and your star map. If you didn't know, you can access your star charts here, or you can simply click next to your character name, and it'll pop up your star map. Sometimes it lags, but as a scout or light interdictor, it should be your job to make sure that you are safe before even attempting to open your star map. By that I mean cloak your ship, or warp to a planet and cloak your ship and burn away from the planet. Essentially, you just want to make it so that somebody scanning you isn't going to find you. So, in our hypothetical scenario, we're going to use the Forge. Now, there's a few routes into the Forge. You can see the dotted lines, the long dotted lines. Those are your in and out routes that let you go from the Forge to other sections of space. If, let's say, an enemy force was spotted coming from Losec at Oijanen, and they were coming to our area through the pipe, we're going to want to put light interdictors in 3 locations or 4 locations. The first one will be your scout, cloaky on the gate, watching to see what comes through. Your next guys will be your line of defense, or your second line. If you have enough players to do this, it is highly advisable that you do. If you do not, well, then you may have to jump from one system to another system, to another system, to another system, to another system, in search of enemy fleets. Now here's a specific situation. Your enemy fleet may jump into a pocket system. Pocket systems have no exit. One of the best things to ever happen to you as a light dictor pilot is an enemy fleet jumping into a pocket and you having enough forces to fight them when they try to come back. I always suggest light dictors and scouts always fit a red scanner in one of your mid slots. As your job description, you're not likely a combat pilot, so it is more beneficial to have an interdiction sphere launcher, and the best red scanner you can have if you're a interceptor scout. If you're not an interceptor scout, you're an interdictor scout, you get a crime timer or a combat timer every time you use the sphere launcher. That can make you easy to kill and easy to target. As a light dictor pilot, I lose many destroyer interdictors on regular CTAs and QRFs. You don't have to worry about it. Most of the time, the cost to replace these things in IP is anywhere between 150 to 200 for the top tier high-end interdictor, all the way down to like 15 IP for the cheapest fit you can possibly get. Now, as a forward scout, you have 2 main jobs. As a forward dictor, you have pretty much 1 main job. Your forward scouts will likely post up in places like BWF TAC ZZ. If your fleet commander says that an enemy fleet is spotted in BWF TAC ZZ and you're not already there, you should plan for at least a 2-jump cutoff route and try and make sure that these 2 jumps or 3 jumps land on an intersection system like this one, BND TAC 16. Now you would go to BND TAC 16 as a scout, burn off the gate a couple hundred, cloak up, and watch for enemies to come in. If your scouts don't see anything, but you're in a light dictor, you don't want to be in the same system as the scout unless FC tells you to. If FC tells you to, then go there. If not, go to the system behind your scout that is also an intersection system. If it's a straight line pipe, don't worry too much about it unless the FC says that you want to catch them in that pipe. A good example is the Ojanen pipe. The Ojanen pipe, when you go from Ojanen all the way up to BWF TAC ZZ, is essentially a one-way route if you set things up right, because the only gate you need to bubble is BND TAC 16. If they come through Ojanen, it doesn't matter which one of these 4 systems they land in, or 5 systems if you count the pocket. To assault farther into your region, they're going to have to go to B&D Tech 16. So let's go in. We'll look at setting up bubble placement. Now this is something that you do on the fly. You should not have to open your solar system to view it. As soon as you jump the gate into the system, just look around you. You'll see where all the gates and planets are. You'll see in this one, you have the 01 Tech FTD gate. You have the IOO Tech 70 gate. And then you have the 4Com5 and BND Tech 16 planet. Now, when you come through, you're going to be coming through. Oh, shoot, I didn't mean to close that. So when you come through, let me zoom back in here. Oh, that's not the system we want. Well, shoot. Where'd the forge go? There we are. Alright, Ojanen. And then we come here. And you know that the 2 in gates and the 1 out gate, you're in BND. Your in gates are 4Com5, I0070. Your out gate is 01 FTD. When you want to catch your opponent and make sure that they can't get to the 01 FTD gate, you need to find where that gate is. See, those 2 gates, those are your 2 in gates, are next to one another. And your out gate, 01 FTD, is in a corner. This is a perfect system to set up a bubble trap. So what you do, you look at your solar system here. You can see this gate is in a line where you end up with 2 warp-ins that are on a short angle. So you don't need to bubble all directions around this gate. You actually only need to bubble from the gate towards the sun and maybe about 25 to 30 kilometers on either side of the initial center bubble. 3 dictors, 3 light dictor pilots, can completely stop an enemy fleet from traversing this solar system, or if not stop them, you can at least slow them down. Likely what they'll do is they'll jump in, they'll try and jump to the gate, they'll land in your bubble. When they land in your bubble, burn away, cloak, align to a different gate or planetary body, and warp to that after you pop your cloak off. If they've got interceptors and other fast ships, I would suggest not activating your cloak. Simply burn out of your bubble, activate your inertial stabilizers, deactivate your micro warp drive, and hit warp all at the same time as fast as you can. This should put your ship into what I call an insta-warp situation, because your maximum speed for warp drops drastically, so since you're already moving quickly, you'll be on target. Your inertial stabilizers are only there to help your ship turn quickly, so if you are already aligned to your warp out, do not bother with your stabs. Just hit the warp, turn your micro warp drive off. As soon as you land, burn away from whatever planetary body, if there's no reds or grays near you, and immediately cloak. Inform your fleet commander that the fleet dropped into your bubble and they're probably burning to the gate. If they stay in local, hop from gate to gate to gate at about 100 kilometers. If you spot one or land in your own bubble, you're probably going to die. If you don't, then what you do is you pop bubbles on the exits and the entrance. You put bubbles at around 75 in front or 75 behind the gate in a straight line, and it will either drag the target behind the gate. I'll put a little mark here. So say you got a guy warping from this one, and you put one behind the gate there at about 800 km. They're going to land 800 km off the gate. And if you burn out to 800 and then turn back towards the gate and run towards the gate with your micro warp drive on, but don't activate your bubble, wait for the enemy to drop into your drag bubble and pop a second bubble, you have then successfully trapped the fleet between 2 bubbles, and they can no longer short warp to the gate. We'll represent that in blue. They can no longer short warp to the gate, and they can no longer warp from here to here, because they will either land in your blue bubble, the close bubble, closer to the gate, or they have already landed in your red bubble farther from the gate. If you trap some forces here, they may try to burn to the gate, or they may try to recollect themselves to move on. Now, this could buy you anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes to 10 minutes, and if you are a good enough dictor pilot, you can burn out of your bubbles, cloak, align, warp, come back, and keep doing this over and over again to prevent them from actually jumping this gate. You can actually stall them long enough by yourself or in a small group for so long that they never leave the solar system. I mean, this will only stop them if they're being very cautious. If they're not being cautious and they've decided to completely yeet themselves into your system, they will most likely land in your bubble and burn straight to the gate and jump it, not even bothering to target you. If that's the case, if they land in your bubble and they don't try to target you, and they don't try to burn at you, cloak. Cloak, inform your fleet commander on voice communications that they burned straight through your bubble and they're jumping the gate. Since you've popped bubbles, you will most likely have a crime timer, but this is why you want to have backup dictors in that area. So, we're going to exit this. I'm going to go back to the star chart again real quick. So say, come on, you dang thing. Say they go from Ojanen, and they're coming up into Geminate. They land BWF. You've got one dictor on the BND 16 gate in system, and they're going to be on the 01 TAC FTD gate, probably 70 off behind it, 70 off in front of it, in line with the BND. This is a straight line warp. If they want to get farther in, they have no other route around. With this little IPS TAC QB small region, they are now forced to go to 01 TAC FTD. If they go there, you should have a second dictor volunteer who is already in place to stay behind, like the first dictor. You will end up behind the enemy fleet. Now, in this situation, stay in that system unless told to by the FC. The FC might have you chase them if they come this way, or they might have you chase them if they go that way. Either way they go, don't chase them unless you're told to. It's a good way to get yourself killed, and then you're no longer effective in combat. However, if your FC does not tell you to chase, stay in your initial systems of BND and OTAC 1 or 01 TAC. Stay in those systems. Don't bubble the gates. Stay cloaked and keep an eye on local and in communication with your FC. Now, if he says the enemy is doing a U-turn or retreating the way they came or going back to, Ojanen, now you have a chance to do the exact opposite of preventing them from coming farther into your space. Now, as a light interdictor, you will decloak, you will bubble the 01 TAC FTD gate so that they cannot warp off of it quickly, and then burn out of your bubble and warp to within 70 kilometers of BND TAC 16. Once you land, you drop another bubble, burn out of that bubble, and either go behind the gate or jump to a planetary such as the sun, a planet, an asteroid belt, an anomaly at 100, something safer than getting landed on by an entire enemy fleet. Once you've done that, cloak back up. If reds come in system, go check your bubbles. If they land in your bubbles, because you're off warp line, you won't land in your own bubble. Hopefully your combat timer has gone away by then. If you can, like example, you bubbled the 01 FTD gate, and then you 70 bubbled the BND 16 gate. You will then burn on the other side of the BND 16 gate from the 01 gate. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. So, you have BND TAC 16 and the 01 gate, as explained earlier. 01, they're going BND 16. So you'll take, and we'll use blue to represent the bubbles themselves. You'll take and, oh shoot, one second, let me zoom in a little bit first. There. Now you'll take and you'll bubble directly on this gate. And then you will red to warp, warp to this gate, yellow for on-grid movement, and then burn in that same straight line past this gate, and drop another bubble. If they successfully land in this first gate, we're in a green here, they successfully land there, burn out, and warp to you, they will then, we're going to clear real quick, use blue to represent, there's bubble 1, there's bubble 2, they go to warp, instead of warping and landing at this gate, they will warp and they will land in your bubble behind the gate. Now you have done two things. You have slowed them down from warping off the first gate, that's your in gate, and you have also slowed them down from warping or jumping into their out gate to go farther into your system. In the reverse situation, you're trying to prevent their retreat. You will come through this gate or warp to this gate and then bubble it on top of the gate at 0. You will then warp to this gate, go behind it a little bit. Oh, we forgot we were saying yellow is on grid movement. We'll go behind it a little ways, and we'll drop another bubble at 70. Now this won't stop them if they're warping to a planetary and back. However, if they're in a rush, your forces are right behind them, they're trying to run away, they'll warp directly to that gate, and they will land at 70 behind it. Now they cannot short warp back to the gate. No short warps. Doesn't happen. And they have to manually burn whatever large ships they have back to the gate. If they're in full swing retreat, their faster ships will burn to the gate quicker and jump and maybe hold on the other side to wait for the large ships. This will allow your fleet to essentially jump in between. We'll use dark blue. This is the enemy fleet. That doesn't show up very well. We'll go with purple. So the enemy fleet lands in your bubble, and we'll use green to represent your fleet. Will also land in your bubble. And then the enemy cruiser fleet, represented by yellow, will either jump the gate and wait on the other side while you battle their larger forces, or will attempt to jump the gate and come back. If your fleet commander is using a delayed assault tactic, he will have forces, give me a sec, waiting here. Those forces are your reinforcements. Your first set of ships will warp in and engage the enemy large, and your second set of ships will warp in and most likely engage the enemy set of smalls. Or, if they're very smart, they will jump the gate and wait on the other side. If your forces win the battle, you will completely demolish them. Their only option will be to retreat backwards into your system to be routed and killed. If you do not win, your ships on the other side of that gate can then warp to safe areas and either log out or continue to move towards low-sec and set up more camps to prevent stragglers and other enemy smalls and mediums from coming through farther gates into low-sec. This kind of strategy is mostly employed by scouts and light interdictors, and is actually very important to understand as a light interdictor. As a heavy interdictor, your job should never be to bubble gates as a forward scout or to bubble gates away from the primary fleet. Heavy interdictors are considerably more expensive than light interdictors. Now, mind you, that's still not nearly as expensive as like a faction battleship, so they are technically somewhat expendable. However, light interdictors are extremely fast. Fast to warp, fast to align. They can get out ahead of an enemy fleet and allow you to essentially cut off their exit, or at the very least slow their exit down. Having multiple dictors kind of do a buddy hop where one bubbles the out gate and the in gate to a system, and then the other one jumps through those bubbles to the next system and bubbles its out gate and in gate, and then you both cloak. This will pretty much slow them right down. It'll take them anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes to traverse those two systems at full burn, which can give your fleet plenty of time to catch up. I hope this has been an informative video for light dictor pilots on how to position yourself with a little bit of autonomy. Now, mind you, this is all dependent on fleet commander's input. If your fleet commander is not giving you input, you will not be an effective dictor pilot without experience as a fleet commander. Some of the best dictor pilots have experience as fleet commanders, and they understand how to cut off enemy escape routes, ingress routes, egress routes, etc. The reason to fit those scanners as well is that you can, as a dictor, prevent an enemy log-off trap in your system. You scan them down, you warp to them, you cloak. You wait, they log off. You pop a bubble, they log back in. You have a fleet waiting for their landing. Now they're stuck in your bubble, cannot escape, and your fleet destroys them before they get a chance to retreat. Mind you, in that situation, you should also have all of the system's outgates bubbled at around 70 to 50 kilometers off the gate in the direction of the celestial body that your fleet is going to assault the enemy position from. So we'll do a quick, I'm just going to pick a solar system. Alright, so let's say enemy fleet warps to NPC station, burns off or docks or does something. They come here and they log out. Or maybe you've got the station blocked off. So they warp FDZ4 TAC AVI, planet or moon. They warp there. Your scanners catch them before they log out. So now you know that's where they are. Now what you're going to do is you're going to find the out gates. Here. Here. And you're going to bubble. Now to bubble, you're going to approach, after landing at the gate, you're going to approach your known enemy log-off location and drop bubbles in a straight line while burning towards that gate until you reach about 75 kilometers. Any farther than that, they can burn straight through or out of your bubble and just warp directly to the gate, which is a lot faster than having to slow burn to the gate, warp to another celestial body and warp back, etc. So, using this tactic, you can actually completely prevent log-off traps in your system if your dictor and scout pilots are quick enough and efficient enough on their scanning. One caveat to that is, if there are a lot of posses and citadels and other things in that system, it will make it fairly difficult to track down the source location for their signals. When you come into a system and you're a light dictor and you're set up to intercept enemy fleets, you're going to want to scan the system before there are reds in the system, count the number and the position of those anomalous signatures, maybe even scan them down so you know what they are. And then when an enemy does come in and your FC says they're warping off to a log-off trap location, etc., pop your scanner, immediately open your system map and start looking for new signatures. That will pretty much tell you exactly where they are if you manage to catch them. And the more dictors you have doing this, the higher the chances you have of finding them. Once you do find them, your fleet can warp in and engage, and other dictors will remain behind on the gates to prevent escape. Good example. We will use a green line to represent the line of travel from that system, or that planetary, and blue to represent the bubbles. Now you want your bubbles, again, just off that gate, about 75-50 kilometers, and you want to be lined up to that planetary body, such as the sun, or a planet, or a station. Once you're there, you're good to go, man. All you got to do is pop that bubble and wait for commands. If you do scan them down, inform your FC. Your FC will tell you whether he wants you to attempt to tackle, warp there and cloak, and observe, or if he wants you to hold position and just keep the out gates bubbled. Now that they're trapped in the system with you, they have two options. Fight their way out, burn out, well, three options technically. Fight their way out, retreat and try and burn out and take heavy losses, or take the fight. If they're well prepared, they may just try to take the fight. In this case, if your forces start to lose, you should burn off the gate. You cannot deactivate your bubbles, but burn off the gate, burn away from your bubble, and let it go. Let it pop. You don't want to trap your own guys as they try and escape the system. This is a situation where heavy dictors are actually the most useful, because what you can do is you can set heavy dictors on the out gates. You can use your light dictors to scan down and try and attempt to capture the enemy forces. And if they try to warp to the gates to escape, they will land in your heavy dictors. A good thing to do also is keep light dictors stationed with your heavy dictors. If your light dictor or your heavy dictor sees that the enemy fleet has bypassed the interdiction sphere, even just by a kilometer or two, they can actually burn out of the heavy interdiction sphere in the direction of the enemy's warp line. We'll do an example sketch of that real quick. So, say your forces think, that these guys are going to warp from this planet across, and they end up warping from this planet. Your bubble, your primary heavy bubble, is right here. You see ships skate just past the top of your bubble. So you'll have your light dictor burn to the top of the bubble and turn his bubble on. Now, your heavy dictor can turn off his bubble, and anything warping from that station will get caught in the light dictor bubble after it's up. Once you've reached that point, the heavy dictor will no longer interdict your own fleet. Your fleet can then jump to the gate and intercept any ships attempting to come to that gate from the station. Mind you, this requires you have forward scouts, scouts that are giving good intel, and a fleet commander who is paying attention to the intel he's given. I hope this video has been informative and has been at least somewhat entertaining. If you could please give a like and subscribe. The more people we have doing this, the better off we are. And if we can make some ad revenue from these videos, all the better. The void consumes. We'll see you next time.